Hello, everybody. My name is SS Frazier, and I'm going to be reviewing my first article for my experimental class. This first article is titled Autism Spectrum Disorder Among U.S. Children 2002 to 2010 Socioeconomic, Racial, and Ethnic Disparities. Now, there are several different co authors for this article, but the first one is Miss Maureen S. Durkin, and her fellow co authors created this article based off of a study that was done in 2002 to 2010, which was a cross sectional study looking at different 8-year-old children in different United states, 11 to be exact, and observing the association between indicators of socioeconomic status and the prevalence of autism spectrum disorder within these children. These studies were able to be conducted based off the help of the Autism and Developmental Disabilities Monitoring Network as well as the help of the U.S. Census in order to collect the different students that they wanted to observe and really just be able to monitor them and not interrupt with their daily activities. Not all 8-year-old children were selected for the study. Of course, they had to be a person who suffered with autism spectrum disorder. They also, again, had to be 8 years of age at the time. They had to reside in the surveillance areas during the surveillance years, and they had to meet the needs of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders 4th edition text revision. The study only took place in areas where the ADVM network had surveillance in the years of 2002, 2006, 2008, and 2010. The 11 states that participated within the study are as follows: Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas, Colorado, Georgia, Maryland, Missouri, New Jersey, North Carolina, Utah, and Wisconsin. Of this, 8 of the different states participated in all 4 years of the study, but however, all 11 states did participate in at least 3 of the years that the surveillance was taking place. So, of the people that they were studying, there was 13,396 8-year-old children, male and female, with autism spectrum disorder that were participating in these sites and were being surveillance for these 4 years that the surveillance studies were being conducted. The denominator for the population was for all 8-year-old children that reside in the census tracts with the respective study areas and surveillance years according to the U.S. Census, meaning that students that were 8 years old that lived within the areas that they were observing the other students at could have and were a part of the denominator. So that number was 1,308,641 8-year-old children that were under surveillance during the years that the study was taking. From reviewing the article, there seemed to be one main hypothesis that kept being re-mentioned and touched upon throughout the entire piece of the article, which was saying that there would not be a positive SES gradient in the 8-year-old students that had school resources because they did have proper educational services that could tolerate and best serve their autism, and that it should be accessible for all school-age children in America that had schools that offered these services, even though in reality that was not true. This was not supported by the results of the research. It did show that there was a positive gradient in autism spectrum disorder prevalence when students were aided with educational resources such as like education on their autism in all the 4 years that were being observed in all the racial categories, which was Hispanic children, non-Hispanic children that were black, and then non-Hispanic children that were white. So all of them showed the same results in all 4 years, which I think is very significant to show that just because they have these educational resources does not mean necessarily that there's not going to be a show of their autism. It is not surprising that the hypothesis was not supported by the results of the research. There were many limitations and other considerations that should have been thought of prior to conducting the study One of the main ones being that a majority of 8-year-old children were left out that lived in the states that were being researched just because they did not live around the area. And I feel like for a study like this, where you are studying such a very serious disorder, that all 8-year-old students that lived in these states should have been accounted for. And it seemed as though the main people that were excluded that were 8 years old were 8-year olds that lived in poverty or middle class areas. So you're kind of basing the whole study off of these high SES children that did have these resources, and that's not the majority of people in America, or at least in these states. Another limitation was that these researchers relied too heavily upon the U.S. Census to be accurate, even though we know as a nation that the U.S. Census does not account for everybody for multiple different reasons. So you really could have been missing people that did actually live in these areas. In conclusion, there were major disparities between SES groups when it came to autism spectrum disorder prevalence, and based off the U.S. surveillance data that was conducted between 2002 and 2010. I strongly believe there should be updated, if not already updated, studies to show that all 8-year olds or whatever age group that they are looking at is being accounted for, to really see if the results were not that far off, even though they did miss a good portion of the population they were looking at, or if the results would show a totally new different outcome.